We saw it. We saw the movie that the Lady Gaga fans tried preventing you from seeing. We saw the movie that the comic book fans said, ignore them fans. This is one of the best movies this year. It is fantastic. It's up there with Infinity War. It's up there with Deadpool. It's up there with...
How dare those fans of Lady Gaga try to get us to watch a good movie?
Yeah,
how dare they?
How dare they? Which I will be seeing, and I might do a solo review on that.
Venom fans are
delusional. But we did see Venom. We did. The Venom movie. Oh my God! Have you guys ever heard about the production hell this thing went through?
No, do tell.
This thing has been in development for the longest time. Ever since Spider-Man 3 ended, this was supposed to be something that was going to be made. I don't know if it was going to be made with Topher Grace, but this was always something in mind. And then they rebooted the films with Andrew Garfield as Spider-Man and Emma Stone as Gwen Stacy. And as you remember, there was supposed to be a whole universe built around that.
Yes, there was.
There was going to be a Spider-Gwen movie. There was going to be a Sinister Six movie. And from there, they were going to have a Venom movie. And this thing was scrapped, of course, when Sony eventually gave... Well, not entirely scrapped, but they basically had to do a whole revision of it. When Sony decided, okay, we messed up. Let's give this boy back to his home and see how they handle him. We'll just take whatever money you guys get from the film, and you guys can take merchandise money. And then Homecoming came out, and it proved everything that Sony should be doing, which is giving any Spider-Man stuff back to Marvel. But you know what? Sony wasn't out of the game just yet. Instead, they were like, we got 2 movies that we're gonna do this year. We're gonna release Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. We're gonna bring Miles Morales on the big screen in an animated way, in a cool animated way. I mean, this film is looking amazing, but gotta get that live action. Gotta get that live action universe going. Everybody else has got a universe going, so let's try a villain verse without Spider-Man. And to kick things off, we have their first film, and it's not reported that this will be a universe. This did get reported that it has 3 sequels already lined up and confirmed.
3 sequels?
2 sequels.
Okay.
I'm sorry. It's going to be 3 movies.
I was going to say
that's 3 too many.
No.
Yeah.
But if you've been paying attention to news recently with Sony, there is a Morbius movie, the Spider-Man vampire villain, and a Kraven movie as well, who is Kraven the Hunter, who hunts dangerous creatures on Earth, and considers Spider-Man to be one of them. Which I don't know how you're gonna do that when Spider-Man doesn't exist.
He'll probably try to hunt down Venom. It'll probably be like a thing where it's like Eddie Brock is like the.
That's a really cool interpretation.
Yeah, it's like I can't wait for them to screw it up.
No, Matthew, come on, man. But we're gonna get into this review, Venom. I'm gonna give a quick plot synopsis, real quick, basically of what this movie is. Eddie Brock, they actually kept that character in. Luckily, they actually got him still. He is a journalist who has a very big ego. He is like this hardcore journalist, gets to the facts, has dug up a lot of conspiracies on companies, public figures, whatever it may be. He's on the internet. He has his own show or anything.
As told through the brilliant intro graphic, the
super cut of all
the super cut,
all the exposition cut, basically.
The YouTube channel trailer.
It's a show reel, if anything, for any company.
Yeah, basically it's like, hey, you want to hire Eddie Brock? Here you go. Here's footage. He basically gets tips from. He doesn't get tips actually. He gets an email one night on his girlfriend's laptop. He hacks into it and sees that this company that is called the Life Foundation is doing some experiments. And Carlton Drake, who is like the CEO of the company, played by Riz Ahmed, and Eddie Brock's played by Tom Hardy. I should probably say that. So Eddie Brock is on his fiance's laptop, who's Michelle Williams, Anne is her name, and he sees this email about how they're doing experiments and everything, and to keep everything on the down low. And rather than going to his girlfriend and asking things, he decides, you know what, I have an interview lined up with Carlton Drake. I'm gonna bring this up during that interview. And he brings it up during the interview, and unfortunately he gets fired. His fiance gets fired because they associate that the reason he found this information was through her. So fiance dumps him. Eddie's doesn't have a fiance anymore. He's dumped. He gets fired from his job. Cut to 6 months later. He's a drunk loser, lives in a crappy apartment and everything. And he gets a tip one night from Jenny Slate's character, Dr. Dora Skirth, who says that, look, I'm so sorry.
Skirth. But yeah, we looked at each other because we thought that her last name was Girth.
We're like, that's not her name.
Dr. Girth.
That will be her name in the porn parody.
Yeah. For me, that is her name. I won't acknowledge that it's Skirth.
Speaking of girth, can we talk about... never mind.
Let me finish this up.
I don't know where that's going.
Let me finish this up real quick. But Jenny Slate, basically, Dr. Dora basically gives him a little tip. Look, you were right about Carlton Drake. He's a madman. You need to get this exposed. So she breaks him into the facility one night. He sees this one homeless person, tries to get some footage of her, and the homeless person attacks her, and something gets inside Eddie. He goes back home. He's freaking out. He starts hearing voices in his head, and he's just like, what is happening to me? And it's not until Carlton Drake sends like some security teams after him that is revealed that Eddie has this symbiote inside of him, this parasite known as Venom, and the two form a friendship basically to try and stop Carlton Drake from destroying the world. Now, I'm going to get into something about that plot later that I have a big issue with this movie, especially with all the promoting it's been doing. But yes, that's basically the rundown. Venom is a parasite that goes onto Tom Hardy, and they have to try and survive together while being hunted down and prevent Carlton Drake from doing whatever sinister plans he has. Sounds like the movie we saw, right?
It does sound. You explained it. Sorry, we
were kind of messing around
because there's a certain point. This isn't a spoiler. It shouldn't be, but at some point there is sort of a female symbiote, and so I wrote down my notes: Femme Venom, and then thick. And that's what I was trying to transition to with the girth comment.
Yeah.
But let's start off on a good note here. All right.
Yes.
I'll start off with the positive. The biggest positive I could say. I really like the design of Venom. I think it's a cool design. I thought Spider-Man 3's design was fine as well. Yes. I know a lot of people have been crapping on that because of the way he looks in this movie, but I always thought that, no, the Spider-Man 3 design looked fine. It's just that he wasn't in the film enough because a lot of those villains were crowbarred into one movie.
There's not a lot of time you could dedicate to designing one villain when you have to design like 3 or 4. I can't remember how many.
Well, the biggest problem with that is that they didn't have enough shots of just Venom, of just Eddie Brock talking through Venom. They kept peeling back the face to show Topher Grace's dumb face with his
which
weird
they don't do in
teeth.
this movie. Venom gets Venom. I will say, if you love seeing that tongue, you love seeing them teeth. You're going to see plenty of that on screen. Oh, yeah. This one is like the big, huge, jacked version from the animated series in the 90s of Spider-Man. Oh, I mostly compare it to that, or if you played the Ultimate Spider-Man game or read the comics, it's more like that design as well. In fact, it doesn't even have the spider symbol.
I always, whenever people bring up the animated series in Venom, I always think of that one clip where Spider-Man has the Venom symbiote, and he's chasing Shocker of all people. And he, like most of the series, Spider-Man is pretty mellow with his voice acting. Like, he probably underacts.
Hold on, I gotta play that.
But this one scene, he's just, Shocker, I'll chase you to the ends of the earth. It's super funny and super great. Like off kilter for Spider-Man, but even in this context,
I got it right here. Hold on.
Invincible! Get back here, Shocker! Shocker! You can't escape me! I'll chase you to the ends of the earth!
Oh, I kind of love that.
No, that is like good cheese.
That is that is
the one
that's gourmet if I have ever seen.
That's some like.
I mean, that's what the '90s series was kind of known for later on, as like, you know, we grew up and we look back on it as like, oh, this was really cheesy. Like, there's even one where it's like Eddie Brock's like working out. And he's like super jacked while doing bench presses. He's got photos of Peter Parker hanging around, and he's like, "I'm gonna get that Peter Parker one day, don't you worry."
So how do you go from that to where like the main question for a lot of people lies? Where do you go without Spider-Man? How do you do a Venom movie where it hinges on the character's main motivation throughout most of the comics and the television series that it's Peter Parker? But where do you go now?
It's hard to say where they went now, because looking at this movie, it's like, you're trying to do this whole thing, and the whole thing about the symbiote is that it shares a hatred with Eddie Brock, which is why Venom was originally a villain. And it shared this hatred of Spider-Man and Peter Parker. The symbiote knew Peter Parker was Spider-Man because it attached himself onto Peter Parker. But when Peter Parker was like, this thing's making me crazy and chaotic, and he took the symbiote off and got rid of it, it attached itself to Eddie Brock because Eddie Brock got fired from the Daily Bugle because Peter Parker like exposed him for like doing some scandal or whatever, like he does in this film.
There's kind of a hint at it. They mentioned the Daily Bugle once at the very beginning, and like because the main bulk of the story takes place in Los Angeles instead of
San Francisco.
San Francisco, excuse me, instead of New York. So they do mention the Daily Bugle by name. Yeah. And I think in the credits, the astronaut at the beginning is credited as James Jonah Jameson II.
Yes, it's his son.
Yeah.
That was revealed over the weekend when like a bunch of comicbook.com articles were coming out that there's a Jameson character.
So there's clearly like a tie-in to Spider-Man, but like not a huge one.
Yeah.
Right.
And the thing is that if you're a big fan of Venom, I'm not, but I know a lot of its history because of the 90s cartoon.
Yeah.
There are some like he gets fired from his company, which leads to him getting the symbiote and everything. I mean, there's little ties to what you know as Venom, but here they're trying to do their own thing with the character, which you can totally do. And did they do a good job? We'll get to that in a bit. I want to start off with some other positives first before we get there. I will say this: I liked the Eddie Brock and Venom relationship for the most part.
Yeah.
I thought some of the comedy works, but I would say most of it didn't. But I would say Eddie Brock and Venom, who he does both voices. He did the voice for Venom, and
I didn't know that originally.
You didn't know that?
No, that's pretty cool.
I
did
think
a great performance
as a
Venom.
dual performance, he did a solid job.
Yeah. No, I definitely I agree there. That's a heavy positive for me is that there's definitely comedic moments, intentionally comedic. Some of them land, some of them don't, but I do appreciate the ones that do land because it kind of took me aback. I won't say why, that I've genuinely found myself laughing with the movie. And there's like 2 fight scenes, one closer to the beginning and one with just Venom fighting off a horde of people. They're 2 actually really cool fight scenes and well choreographed.
The SWAT team ambush, which they've been promoting it like crazy by releasing clips of it, is actually a really cool action scene.
Yes.
I like the way it's shot. I thought it could have been shot a little bit better. I would have loved to see that scene from the SWAT team's perspective because that's how the scene started, but then it focused more on like what's happening to Venom from his perspective.
Yeah.
But I mean, you see how menacing this dude can be just against just normal humans. A whole like army of SWAT basically trying to ambush him, and they get annihilated.
Yeah, with the exception of like that one Wilhelm scream in that scene, I'd say that was like one of my favorite parts.
Obvious Wilhelm.
Oh
scream.
yeah, but it was one of my favorite parts of the film. That and like there's the antagonist symbiote of the film, which sort of
We'll get to in a bit.
Just kind of there for the first part of the film, but it's kind of going from like host to host, and there's a scene of like them just killing a bunch of people, and it was actually pretty good. And because I was worried like
on a PG-13 level,
with this film being PG-13, I was like, how are they going to do this? They did it pretty well in terms of the way
brutal.
in terms of the way they shot it. It was still brutal without being outright just like censored. It's not like
without there being a lot of carnage.
Yeah.
It's not like where they have to really
shut up with them puns.
Yeah, it's not like any of the X-Men films where they have to like really kind of find a way to make have Wolverine be Wolverine, but PG-13.
Yeah.
But look, I'm just gonna ask you guys this: you think that's enough talking about the good of this movie?
Yeah.
Well, so hold on, I wanna because I was talking.
If you got anything to add, go ahead.
Because I'll just go off on my own little tangent for right now. It's because I was talking to my friend Michael, who said he messaged this Facebook group because I'd posted about my thoughts of the film on Facebook pretty briefly, but it summed up my thoughts. And so my friend messaged me and said that he actually liked it, or he was like, I don't think it's like it's a great film, but I think that it's better than people are giving it credit for, which I can understand, because if you hear everybody saying that the movie is like, oh, it's garbage, you might be pleasantly surprised by certain things. That's what happened with me in Green Lantern. I went into the movie expecting to hate it, not even because of what people were saying, but just because I myself thought that it looked dumb, and then I'm like now one of like the 3 people in the world who got some enjoyment.
I was gonna say you're on that island all by yourself.
Yeah, I'm aware. So the thing is,
the 2 other people that like Green Lantern.
Yeah, with our last review, Next Gen, I kind of tried to look at it from more of a positive perspective while still being pretty critical because it wasn't a good film.
Yeah.
This one, kind of same deal. I'm going to try to speak to the positive qualities, but I do have jokes that I'd like to say about it. So I'll pepper those in through the discussion. But I also found an interesting article on IGN, which was simply titled "In Defense of Venom," which I might kind of... there's a larger point that I feel like some people who defend this film are trying to make, and I have certain thoughts on how this film might be received years from now. But for now, you two can kind of continue now.
I'll say although I didn't have a lot of positives to say, I do have a lot of negatives to say as well. But most of my negatives, I think, are more out of confusion, because really, when I boil it down, I do not think this was a good movie. I think this was a pretty bad movie.
Yeah.
That being said, I went into it expecting to be bored most of the time and find a decent movie. Instead, I found a movie I thought was pretty low in quality and pretty hilarious, and I got a lot of enjoyment out of it. But for two reasons, for better or for worse, and I would say equally, because it's not The Room. It's obviously not like
Tommy Wiseau bad.
Yeah, no, it's not at that level. Like, because clearly there's like money and a budget, and like there's things behind it, and clearly good acting.
But it's not fan-forstic bad.
No. That's why I say it's confusing, and like I talk positively about Venom sarcastically, because I did get some enjoyment out of it.
One more positive I'll add in, and then we'll get into the beatdown, is that I thought the movie's pacing in the second half was actually fine. When Venom shows up, like, the film actually doesn't slow down, and it doesn't get boring. Like, it kept moving, and I was like, thank God, because if you want to start right now, man, was the first 45 minutes of this boring to me.
Oh, yeah, no, definitely. I would say I'm very glad the rest of the movie was not like the beginning, because that was a boring part, and I thought that would be most of the movie.
The first 40 minutes of this, I'm just warning any of you now who have not seen it, do not expect Venom to be in it. It takes forever for that symbiote to get in Tom Hardy. It took forever.
Literally takes 6 months.
Like, like, you're just sitting there. Like, I turned to Matthew at one point and I went, we're watching Venom, right? We walked into the right movie. There's not another movie with Tom Hardy out right now where he's like a struggling journalist trying to find a breakthrough in his career again.
I have a funny thing to say about that. My main thesis statement for Venom is that I think Tom Hardy thinks he's in a comedy, because on paper you bullet point like the plot points of the first act with like Eddie Brock losing his job, losing his girl, stuff like that. It plays out like a romantic comedy about a struggling guy, and then is subverted because he becomes like a villain at the end or something. Because it plays out as he's a reporter, he's got it all. Then he messes up at his job, then he loses his girl, and then he meets some freaky alien, and he becomes part alien. It sounds like a comedy movie. This doesn't sound like a nitty-gritty, like, gonna hit him with the adrenaline Venom.
The thing is that this movie, once again, tonal problems. Eddie Brock and Venom are in a different movie compared to every other character. Tom Hardy is in a different movie compared to every other actor and actress in this movie.
Yes, that 100% is like my evidence, because at the beginning, Tom Hardy, the way he delivers lines, Tom Hardy's a good actor. He's a very good actor. Mad Max, Dunkirk,
Dark Knight Rises,
fantastic actor. But then you see the first like half hour of Venom, and you're like, what is he doing? Is he like, is he the alien right now? Because he's not talking like a normal person, and I think it's because he thinks he's in a comedy. I think that's what it is.
There are some questionable things about his accent in the film. Like, I don't know if he thinks that's how San Franciscans, whatever they say in Anchorman. I don't know if that's like how they talk, but I don't think it is, because the entire time throughout the movie, I mean, we joked about it on our last podcast, but I mean, he sounds like this the whole time.
Oh, I got parasite.
Like, I know we said,
you were born in the darkness. I was molded by.
I know we said this isn't room quality bad, but damn, man, there are some times he sounds like Tommy Wiseau.
Yeah, no, it's very strange. I think it was a deliberate choice by him. I think
It seems like that, because he is a method actor.
Yeah.
He likes to stay in character on set. He likes to get into character. He likes to try experimental things. And there's a movie called The Drop where he's in Brooklyn. He does a similar accent, and it feels like Tom Hardy was reading about Venom in preparation for this role, and he's like, oh, he's from New York. I can use my New Yorker accent again. Mm-hmm. And then, like, he went on set. He's like, no, we're on San Francisco, so you got to change your accent. And he was just like, I guess this will be my accent for the movie then. Oh, God, I got parasite in me when I talk like that. Jesus.
Yeah, no. It's he is a very different actor, because when you compare him to Michelle Williams or Riz Ahmed, they're definitely on a different level. They're very taking themselves seriously and playing it straight.
It feels like they tried making like Venom in an MCU movie, like a bad MCU movie though.
Yeah.
And then with Michelle Williams and Riz Ahmed, they were like, "Hey, did you guys see Logan? Remember like dark that was? Let's try going for that." But it's Sony at this, so it's like when they try doing it, they end up like instead of like crafting a masterpiece like 20th Century Fox did, they just hit it with a hammer and went, "All right, that looks good."
Yeah, it's like edgy.
We
and
repaired
dark.
it.
We got it.
Edgy, as in like the pieces of glass that we just made.
Yeah.
Matthew, you've been kind of quiet, man. Like,
oh no, sorry, I'm just no, I'm enjoying this really. Man, it's strange because I feel like at times the arc between Eddie Brock and Venom,
which is weird that like he addresses himself as Venom.
Yeah,
it's weird.
That's
like
a question I had. Like, are they both Venom?
Because
is Venom the symbiote, or
it's very weird because the parasites, they come down from the meteor like it happens in the comic and everything, and it's like the symbiotes name themselves. I don't know if that's something that happens in the comic, but it's just weird hearing them address themselves. Because for those of you who don't know, it's not a big spoiler. It's been shown all over the trailers. Riot is in this movie, who is another symbiote that looks very similar to Venom. So of all the ones you could have chosen, I don't know why you chose that one to be the villain for your big climactic fight, which, I'll talk about that later. It's weird just hearing like Venom be like, Riot, he's the leader of our people and everything. It's just like, you guys are just globs of like puddles of mud.
Do you have like a society?
How do you operate?
Who's the janitor on your planet?
Well, also, can I just say one thing? I thought that whenever the symbiotes were like the way that they moved when they were like,
trying to find a host.
When they were trying to find a host, I thought that looked really cool because at some points, like the way that it rippled, it didn't move quite like a liquid. It's like you could it was like looking at a cloud and almost being able to make out the shape of something. Or it's like that poster for like Alien Covenant where it was like you couldn't tell what was going on, where it looked like it was just like a mass of people crowd around, but it's like it's clearly like people mutating into aliens and stuff like that. It looked very, very cool.
I agree with you there. It's just the CGI didn't look the best, but its movement, I will agree. Like the way it moved, it was like, no, that's how that's how I imagined it to be whenever I read a comic or I watched the animated series. They got the movement of it, like, attaching it onto people and how it gets inside the people. I'm like, yeah, that's kind of how I imagined it. That's actually pretty spot on.
There are a lot of little detail things that are like, oh, that's neat, I guess, and then you look at the bigger picture of like how characters like, interact, and you're like,
the moment you get like some small detail, the bigger picture comes in and goes, hey, look at here.
And you're like, no, wow, you couldn't get that part right. That could have been nice to do.
What I was going to say earlier was that it seems like when it comes to character interaction, the arc between Brock and Venom, I didn't feel like there really was one, or if there was,
there wasn't.
Because the thing that I noticed is that when you have a relationship like this, which on paper it's an interesting idea. You have a normal guy, and then you have this alien, which pretty much has no qualms with like killing people.
Who's mainly indifferent, but not.
He wants to eat people.
He's indifferent. He wants to eat people, but it's because he doesn't really have like a reason to care. And Eddie Brock, being someone who cares, obviously, so when they merge, there's a lot of potential there. It felt like at some points it was so drawn out or just not plain out non-existent that I couldn't really tell that there was an evolution in their relationship. And then other times there was like a line said that was like bringing them closer together, but it was so sudden. So like you'll have Venom just randomly kind of explaining like an element of his backstory, and not only is it just out of nowhere, but jarring because
it still doesn't reveal a lot about him.
It doesn't reveal a lot about him, and it sounds, again, having a voice that cool say something so stupid, it takes me out of it.
Yeah.
And that's a big thing.
When
they
reveal why like Venom gets along with Eddie, I busted out laughing at the reasoning. I was like, "Are you kidding me? That's why."
That is a double-edged sword because one, the delivery was genuinely funny. Like it was delivered as a joke, but there was no substance behind it.
No, there isn't.
Because that's my biggest problem. Venom is kind of just a force of nature. He's not really a character.
He isn't.
And that is like a big gripe. The name of the movie is Venom.
The biggest issue is that I think with that first 40 minutes, where we don't see the symbiote interact. And if you haven't heard, a lot of 30 to 40 minutes of this movie was cut.
And that apparently Tom Hardy's favorite.
Tom Hardy's favorite, which apparently had a lot of interacting between Venom and Tom Hardy. Which, if that is true, and this isn't just some thing to get people going we want the director's cut so we can make higher profit sales, just like DC did with Batman vs Superman and Suicide Squad. If that's true, then it's this movie kind of needed that, because this movie would have been a bit better, I think, because this is how it literally is. The arc starts off, Eddie Brock hates Venom. He wants him out of his body. He's freaked out because he wants to murder everything. And then by the end of the film, they're just you're my best friend, you know that, right?
And they don't really have a reason. They don't have a reason.
It just gets to there. It's when did this happen? There was no build up to that.
Yeah, well, so also they kind of get closer, because there's one of my favorite parts is a scene where Eddie is being by no fault of his own awkward, and then is in the car with his ex, and Venom is basically telling, because he can read his thoughts,
giving him a wingman.
He's kind of giving a wingman pep talk, and I was like, this is fun. I like this.
Yeah, it was funny.
I enjoy this. That could have blossomed into something more. That's the moment that's the moment that I was looking for in the film like this, where it's this is where they start to get along.
Yeah, they allude to a lot of character relationship between Eddie and Venom. They allude to the fact that Venom is way more parasitic than Eddie realizes, because they say something about his liver at one point, but that never comes back. That's not really a spoiler, because it's not relevant to Eddie.
Yeah, it's not relevant, and they don't even explain, I'm guessing that's just because he was hungry and needed to eat people.
It was mainly a reason just to have this, this hero's journey of, this character and his friend split up because there's a bad misunderstanding.
Remember what I said last time when we were reviewing Next Gen about the forced tension in the beginning of the third act? This is basically what that was. It was, all right, it's beginning of the third act, so we have to have Eddie be oh no, Venom's probably trying to kill me. And so then they were just arguing, and they weren't arguing, but they were kind of separated, and then they come back, and suddenly it's
I won't give away a lot about the details behind that, because that technically is a spoiler, but that whole sequence that just all revolves around, they don't really develop a lot of relationship between Eddie and Venom. It just sort of happens, and there's not a whole lot of substance, and it sounds like there could have been substance, but it's more along the lines of quickly stated. And then let's cut back to our Elon Musk ripoff that is trying to terrorize.
I got a whole section on this. Let's
you want to jump into that?
Let me jump into it. So the antagonist of this film. Now, I want to say for the record, we have reviewed 3 films currently on this show, one of which was a bonus episode, admittedly, when we reviewed Predator.
Which will be coming soon, I swear.
Which will be coming soon. That'll be exciting. And then we had this. And then Next Gen.
I don't know if I could say this, or you could probably edit it out, but a lot of movies seem to have a hate boner for Elon Musk. Because
Steve Jobs, and just
Jobs. Anybody in the STEM field that's a huge prominent talking point.
Any multi-million-dollar techies and stuff like that. Sure. So why is it that every evil scientist in these types of movies is a patently bad scientist? You'd think, I like it when my antagonists are at least competent at their jobs, where it's no, we need to do this, that, and the other thing. If he had a Sherlock type thing where it was basically he was no, do this, this, and this, or he's clearly, because there's a scene where he's talking to another scientist and it's start human trials and experiments, and it's no, it's too soon, and then he's just I don't care because I'm a bad scientist,
and then makes a threat.
Well, why don't you care? Because I want it now.
Yeah, no, it's so strange, because it just paints the stereotype, or not the stereotype, the archetype of just a villain that's evil to be evil, really. That's evil to be greedy, which admittedly is a fine archetype if you do it well. It can be done well, but it's boring and it's overused, and they try to dress it up as more of not a satirization, but a commentary on greed and corporate America.
And here's another thing too, Riz Ahmed. Fantastic actor.
Yes.
He was great in Rogue One for the short time he was on there.
I forgot he was in Rogue One.
He's in this film called Nightcrawler with Jake Gyllenhaal. He's fantastic in that as well. He is the lead in this series called The Night Of on HBO, and he's really good in that as well. And it's just, here's the thing. Any great actor can have a really bad performance when you give him terrible dialogue. And he has some of the worst dialogue, I think, in this movie. It's typical villain cliches. Like, when he opens the back of the truck to reveal the symbiotes in the cases, I was like, don't you say, it's beautiful. And he looks at him and goes, they're beautiful. I'm like, no, come on, man. This guy's better than that.
Are you, like, trying to be evil? What's your deal, man?
But you don't understand, Chris. You don't understand. He's doing it because of global warming.
Oh, my God.
Oh, I forgot that was his reason.
This is the third film that we've reviewed on Variety Viso. Of the 3 films we've reviewed in the premiere of getting...
global warming fits in somewhere.
Global warming. And here's the
not
thing.
on a bigger level, just like to give the villain an excuse to be like, oh, he's actually a smart guy. He's actually, like, he's more than one-dimensional.
And to the credit of those other films, this was the only time that it genuinely offended me. Because with Predator, it was just like, oh, well, this is like the first time we've gotten any hint of this guy's motivations. And it was like, oh, yeah.
Kingsman is a great example.
With Samuel Jackson?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. His whole thing was global warming, but it wasn't like at last minute he says that's his reason. Like, that was alluded to the whole time, and it seems like he's someone that genuinely cares.
You can tie Thanos to this if you want to.
Or even Ultron from Age of Ultron.
Like,
I know.
It's not like they flat out say global warming, but they are saying, hey, we are expediting Earth's resources.
Yes.
So we need to snap and cut these people down a bit.
And Next Gen, that was just randomly added in at the last
No,
second.
in Next Gen and in Venom, it's just shoehorned in at
it's
the end.
just
I
shoehorned.
forgot that was even a thing in Venom because it literally is one bit of throwaway dialogue. It's just to say our villain kind of needs a reason to be evil, so let's just say it's global warming.
It's just weird that this happened in a row too.
Yeah, exactly. I think that is the birth of a trope there.
Well, I think it's because we have it's just the new hot trend. It's the new hot trend of writers. For writers who are making these types of like larger than life villains. The problem is that like nothing is going to ever beat Thanos and the way he did it.
And Killmonger, I would say,
and
too.
Killmonger, that was even more. That wasn't even so much global warming as it was tied to racial
issues,
racial tensions, which made the film so amazing narratively for me.
Yeah, that made Killmonger a very three-dimensional.
Yeah,
exactly, and it was one of the best parts of that film.
The best part is I walked out of Black Panther saying, that's probably their best villain, and right around the corner they have Thanos, and I'm like, dude, you guys knocked it out this year. And then I forgot Ant-Man and the Wasp came out. I'm like, oh,
never mind.
Those villains ain't gonna matter.
Right.
But going back to Venom, I mean, it's just sad to see a great actor like that be underused. Like, I mean, Michael B. Jordan, fantastic actor, was given great material and had a great motivation, pulled off in a great villain. Thanos, voiced by Josh Brolin, great guy. I don't know the guy personally, but great actor. Gave a fantastic voice to Thanos and did a great job voice acting with him and doing mocap for it. That he made a great villain. Here, Riz Ahmed is just that generic CEO villain. I mean, there's a scene I busted out laughing. It's like they forgot to write like something here. It was just to show like, isn't he? You could tell he's gonna be sinister because of the way he interacts with children and everything. It's just like, look how crazy he is.
Oh my God,
there's
love
a
that
field
scene.
trip at his like Life Foundation like space center because he's basically like a rip-off NASA as well.
Yeah.
And there's a field trip going on. And he asks the students, like, oh, do any of you have any questions? And these are, like, fourth graders. And this little girl raises her hand. And everybody, for some reason on the field trip, turns to her in her class and goes, shh, to her. And I'm like, when do children ever do that to someone that raises their hand on a field trip?
Yeah, that's not
It was like, all right, it's just like whoever wrote this scene doesn't know how humans interact, apparently. And we'll talk about more of that throughout the film's review. But, everybody turns to her and shushes her, and Riz Ahmed goes, no, listen to me. And he points at the little girl. We should never be shushed from asking questions. Questions is where we get ourselves in the world. We are exploring the world together and everything. So I want you to have this pin and remember me by. Also, you can lead the rest of this tour. Goodbye. And it's like, she didn't even get to ask her question. Who wrote this scene? Because it's generic villain dialogue, and then it's just an awkward scene because then you realize, wait, he didn't even get the question answered.
And really, if he had answered a question and some element of the question tied into his character arc, boom, already you have a functional scene right there.
Yeah.
Considering everything.
But no, we need to like actually get to like a different area. We need to move.
Or even just as simple as then like him walking around the corner, smile fades from his face, and he just takes out another pin from his pocket and just puts it right there on his jacket.
Yeah, that would have been actually
again. And then you just have more to say, like, oh, this guy's a sociopath, and also
that's like
really cheesy.
That is the part where I'm like, okay, it's clearly supposed to be Elon Musk because it is a generic evil villain monologue, but it's about topics that relate back to Elon Musk. Is like, you shouldn't silence people, always continue asking questions. And then even like the dismissiveness of like, and now that I'm done making myself look good, I'm gonna go do something worth my time.
I'm gonna leave. Goodbye.
Yeah, there's weed that needs smoking.
Oh, okay. I was like, Riz Ahmed doesn't. Okay, Elon Musk.
Well, he might. I mean, I don't know.
I was just wondering.
I bet he did after this film.
Yeah, after this film, he was like, hold on a minute. I just got done like making bank at HBO. Just give me a minute. But man, another problem with this movie. And we were hinting at it with the actors being apparently in different movies compared to Tom Hardy. But it's just the overall tone and feeling with this movie. This movie, I saw a tweet, and it perfectly encapsulated what this movie felt like. This movie felt like it got shelved, and it fell into a wormhole while it was up on that shelf. And it came out of the wormhole from like the early 2000s superhero movies of like Catwoman, Daredevil, stuff like that. And it landed in 2018, and some Sony executive dusted it off and went, oh, hey, we can use this. And it's just like, it feels like a superhero movie from the early 2000s.
My biggest thing watching this movie is thinking, like, if this got an Evil Dead 2 treatment, where they just basically redid the whole movie and dressed it up as a sequel, that would probably be my favorite movie ever.
Yeah.
Because this is genuinely funny, but not... I shouldn't say genuinely funny. It's funny, but I'm laughing at it.
Yeah, I was going to say, I was laughing more at this movie than with it.
Yeah.
That brings me to a good point, because you're talking about this being a film out of time, and I want to now get into kind of my the whole discussion. So there was an article on IGN. It was called "In Defense of Venom." Let's see who wrote this article. This was written. Oh, it doesn't actually say.
We aren't sponsored by IGN, by the way.
We are not sponsored by IGN. I just saw this. I read it, and I was like, this seems interesting. I'll figure out who wrote this.
If you'd like to sponsor us, please contact us.
I want to tie in, because we said about this feels like a superhero movie that doesn't know what to do. At least those felt like they had like a character arc to them. Like there was like kind of a message. But for Eddie Brock, I don't really know what his character arc is.
No, you really don't. And the worst part is this film doesn't even know, even through its promotions. Every poster, every trailer said the world has enough superheroes. But at the end of this movie, Venom and Eddie saved the world.
Yeah.
That really had nothing to do.
Like the attitude of it?
Like they're trying to be like, we're the anti-heroes. Like, no, you're not. You're actually going
straight up save the world.
You're going in a direction that I hate what's happening with Venom. It's that they're trying to make him good in the comics and everything. It's like, because he's such a popular character, that's just like, no, don't do that. Keep him a villain. You guys can make a villain-based movie. We've had plenty of great antagonist main characters that we've sympathized with. Breaking Bad with Walter White. I mean, like, you know, you just look at examples like those.
You can have sympathetic villains.
Warner Brothers is making a Joker solo movie, and just from the footage alone, it looks really good.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm just Joaquin Phoenix and everything. I'm just like, if that comes out and it's successful, this film had no excuse on how bad it was. Yes. It has no excuse on why they couldn't just make Venom the typical villain.
Oh yeah, no, because if you could do a standalone Joker movie without Batman, and you knock it out of the park, you kill it with Joaquin Phoenix, then that sets a precedent. That says that you can do a standalone movie. You don't need like the main character. You don't need the main like yin to the yang here, but you do have to make quality, and there still has to be substance behind it.
Yeah, Matthew, you want to get to a point?
Yes, I think, and this is because I didn't enjoy the film. But I was in.
We don't say.
Yeah, but I want to speak on behalf of some people who did enjoy the film, and because I find that the reasoning genuinely interesting.
Yeah.
I think that we were talking about it being kind of feeling like a movie that came from the era of such films like Catwoman and stuff like that, like bad early 2000s superhero
even
films.
The good ones too, where like there is some feeling that you get like the cheesiness from the Raimi Spider-Man films, and like even the early 2000s X-Men.
Yeah, which some people might look at that and get some enjoyment out of that.
Yeah,
kind of a blast from the past type of thing. Those types of tropes may not hold up as well today, and that's maybe why a lot of critics didn't like it. Well, the thing is, though, I think there are some people who have said, and I could believe it, that this film could have the potential to be kind of like a cult classic type thing.
I can totally see that with this
see
movie.
because I mean, this film, we have to remember, this has like an 80% on Rotten Tomatoes on the audience score.
On the audience score, yeah.
Critical score is very low, but audience
like in
score
the
is very.
30s, I think.
But yeah,
The thing is, and I saw somebody like post about this, and I was like, that's actually very true. When Suicide Squad first came out, it was like this at first, where it's like audiences were saying, no, man, ignore the critics, who cares, and everything. But then over time, even the DC fans I've been noticing, even the DCEU hardcore fans have looked back and went, okay, yeah, that film actually really sucks. And I'm wondering if that's just going to happen over time. Which one of you,
only time will tell.
Yeah, which one of you I think was alluding to at the beginning of this, where like over time we wonder how people are gonna look back on it. Is it gonna become the cult classic movie that Matthew was hinting at, or are people just gonna look back and go, look, at the time we were just really hyped that we got a Venom movie.
There are a lot of people, especially on Reddit, I see try and do these insane mental gymnastics to defend Batman v Superman. But even those people, they look at Suicide Squad and they're like, oh yeah, no, that was pretty crap. So I think I hope something like that happens to Venom, because I don't want that to be revered as a cult classic, because like this is fun, but not for the right reasons.
Yeah.
Because I remember people tweeting about it and people kind of saying, someone would tweet about it and someone would kind of compare it to like old, like maybe like something like the late 90s, like superhero films, like stuff like Spawn and stuff. Like
that's a good one. Yeah.
People would compare it to that, and then some people in the comments below would be like, well, I mean, I still kind of like that film, looking back at it. So maybe whether it's nostalgia or just this genuine, like, love for, like, campy films like that, I think that there are some people.
Because
and again,
they have good campy films, too.
Yeah.
Because Rocky Horror, I love.
And so someone, this article by IGN, which I've been referencing, and I actually want to comment on besides just saying, oh, yeah, it exists. There was a.
I was gonna say, if you want, would you consider Ant-Man a campy film?
First one, because I'm
the first one is
campy. I could say
There's a big reason for that, though. It's because it was originally going to be written and directed by Edgar Wright.
Yeah.
And he's not like a campy guy, but he is a very comedic guy, and he likes to make his heroes, I guess, like not social outcasts, but definitely like on the other side of the rest of the people in the film. Not smarter in any way, but they stand out. And definitely his style is unique, so I think it can be perceived as campy. And with like the trade-off of directors, I think his style came more off as campy because of that, because they kept essential writing from Edgar Wright, but the writing credit went to someone else, and he just took producer credit for the rest of the film. So I'd say there's like an element of campiness to it, but I think it's because it was more of a creative misstep, if anything.
There's even good films out there. The Muppet movies, I would say. Hairspray. I mean, like, those movies, like, hell, if you want, you can look back at maybe even Spider-Man 1 and say it's campy just because some of the
I would definitely say that's campy, borderline cheesy.
You can make a campy film and you can still make it good.
Yes.
It's just sad to see like this. And here's the thing, I didn't hate this movie. I thought it was just, I think it's bad, but it's like everything about it was either just average to bad at worst. Like I didn't walk out like furious. It was like I saw the trailers and I was unimpressed by them. I went in and it's exactly what I saw in those trailers. So it's not like I walked in and it was like hugely disappointed or just like bam, like just caught off guard on how bad it was. It was just like, nah, this is kind of what I was expecting, but it still sucks.
I kind of feel the opposite a little bit. There were parts where like I thought were average, some parts were just hilariously bad, and there were other parts where I thought there could have been potential, and I was frustrated that it didn't go anywhere.
You know what? I can agree to some of that with certain
especially
scenes. The relationship with Eddie and Venom, I felt like could have been
Eddie and Venom, and there's a midway point in the movie where Eddie first finds out he has his symbiote in him, and he's like fighting these guys in his apartment.
Yeah.
The scene, I think, the way Tom Hardy acts and the way he's throwing punches and reacting to himself being flown across the room, is genuinely funny. But it's because it's the epitome of the movie to me. The soundtrack doesn't match up. It's this very like intense, like supposed to be. It's Venom's theme. Like we are introducing Venom. The director had like a dissection. He said, "Yeah, we chose this scene, this soundtrack, this track for this scene."
Oh, it was one of those like director breaks down this
yes,
scene.
Yeah, I think it was for Vanity or something.
Yeah.
But he said like we chose this because it's a character revelation, and I thought, well, okay, but for the tone of what your actor is doing and like the rest of the scene, what's going on around him, he's throwing dumbbells at people with his feet, like, and he's not even controlling it. This is totally. I feel like Hip to Be Square can be playing this whole time, and you have a totally different effect and a better effect.
There's even one scene where it's like, because Venom's controlling him the whole time, his entire movements. He grabs one of the bodyguards, pulls him towards him, and Venom forms a fist with Eddie Brock's other hand. And it's like the entire time it's getting formed, Eddie Brock's looking at it, bug-eyed, freaking out, and so is the bodyguard, bug-eyed and freaking out. And they're both looking back at each other like, what's happening? And it's like, this could actually be played up for comedy, and it would have been actually a much better scene. But because you're playing like intense music, it's like, am I supposed to be taking this seriously? Because it looks silly.
Is this supposed to be like, oh, I'm supposed to be like freaking out? I'm supposed to be like jacked right now. I'm supposed to be hyped.
There's a movie I'm going to mention later when we get to our top 3, bottom 3 that did that scene exactly, but it did it way better in the thing that you're talking about. But
I think I know what you're going to talk about.
And I will say some of that choreography was very creative. But we mentioned Rocky Horror Picture Show. So in this defense of Venom thing, which I'm finally going to actually get to quote, we should have a counter of all the times I tried to quote it prior to this. So to quote, and I don't know the author's name, Rafael Guzman of Newsday compared Venom to midnight movie classics like the Rocky Horror Picture Show. And then... in quotes said, which would be a positive in my book, but which Guzman meant to be a criticism. So it seems like, there are a lot of people who tend to look back on films like that, passionately. So I feel like there are a lot of people who are liking this film, and they're liking it because maybe they just attached to the part of it that it was that was just fun camp. And I can understand that.
Yeah,
I can.
I definitely think it's more of the Sam Raimi Spider-Man crowd. I do not personally like the Sam Raimi movies.
I only like 2. Yeah. I didn't like the first one even as a
2.
kid, and then rewatching it, I still thought it was okay. I love 2. I think 3 is okay as well.
My favorite part of Spider-Man 1 is how Willem Dafoe says, "Spider-Man, I will defeat you." But I don't like the camp in those movies as much. But a lot of people like really latch onto it, and like that is their quintessential.
Because that's what Sam Raimi's known for. They might be just Sam Raimi big fans of Sam Raimi's work.
It works in some movies. I don't feel like it plays well with Spider-Man, but I mean that is a complete not style over substance, but a complete style. A criticism that anybody can have. It's completely subjective.
One thing I like about the second one, I know we're getting away from Venom on this, but I mean it kind of relates, kind of doesn't because Spider-Man's not in it. But I really like what Spider-Man 2 did with it. Kind of took a backseat with the campiness, and it had this whole like 40 minutes where Spider-Man lost his powers and didn't have like his suit or anything, and it was actually like a very like compelling seeing him go through this whole journey of like not wanting to be Spider-Man 2, eventually going, no, I need to be Spider-Man. There's actually a point for me to be this.
And in some times, like in terms of balancing the comedy campiness with the seriousness, I think it actually, at some points, did it better than a lot of MCU movies.
Yes.
There's a great video on the concept of bathos in superhero films, comparing a scene in Doctor Strange and a scene from Spider-Man 2.
Yeah.
Does that also, on a side note, I've often made the joke when Spider-Man 2 gets brought up that it's a metaphor for erectile dysfunction.
Okay.
All right. I won't ask why, but
I will ask why after this.
Because he couldn't shoot webs anymore.
Oh.
Oh.
Okay. All right.
And just like in Back to the Future, with the mom in Back to the Future, he was attracted to danger, so the danger of almost losing Mary Jane, gave him the excitement to keep that manhood turgid for just a little bit longer.
We're getting way off track here. Hold on.
I don't know where you are.
But yeah, I mean, like you look back at even those Raimi films, and they at least can find that balance with the campiness and still making something very good, I would say. Like even though I'm not the biggest fan of 1 and 3, I would say that they're fine for what they are, and 2 I think is excellent. This film just can't find that balance.
No,
it doesn't.
I definitely feel like it doesn't know what it's
and
doing.
The director of this too, let me get his name, but he directed Zombieland.
What?
Yes, he directed Zombieland. I forgot.
Are you kidding me?
His name. Ruben I'm going to pronounce his last name really bad. Fleischer, I think, or Fleischer.
Here, I want to see some of the other stuff he's done.
He directed Zombieland, 30 Minutes or Less, the Jesse Eisenberg movie where he has to deliver that pizza, and then Gangster Squad. Yeah.
Another film that was not critically well received.
Yeah.
I only remember that from the controversy of the movie
reshooting.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't even know there was a shooting.
There was a scene in that movie, and you could find the trailers of it where they try to assassinate a character, and they do it by shooting Tommy guns through a TV. I mean, not TV screen, a theater screen.
Yeah.
That was around the time the Dark Knight.
Yeah, and then Dark Knight Rises had its thing happen.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so that scene was cut completely.
But I mean, this guy, he hasn't had a hit since Zombieland. 30 minutes or less. I actually like it, but it didn't get received well by both audience and critics, mostly because once again. And they just didn't reshoot the movie, but it's based on an actual event where a pizza delivery guy did get a bomb attached to his neck. And in the movie, I mean, they played up for laughs, but in real life, the guy got killed. He died getting with an explosion around his neck.
Yikes.
And then Gangster Squad, you had a lot of reshoots because of what happened. And also just like, it really felt like a knockoff Untouchables.
Okay. All right. Yeah, you
Which
mentioned...
is a shame because great talent in that.
Yeah, it has a fantastic cast.
It's funny that you mentioned the director and compare his work because we also did that for the composer of the movie because I didn't really trash it, but I said that the soundtrack doesn't seem to match with the tone of the film. But the person who made the soundtrack, I don't know his last name, and I'm not going to try and pronounce it, but it's Ludwig, and that's how he's popularly known. I think people just refer to him as Ludwig. He's Childish Gambino's producer. And he did the Black Panther soundtrack. He is a good composer.
He did the Creed soundtrack as well.
Yes.
And it's great in that as well.
He's very good. He produced most of the Awaken My Love album. So it's strange how you compare all of that work and then you compare it to Venom and that character scene where it seems like most of the soundtrack seems forgettable, and I think it's because of that tonal imbalance, that campy imbalance.
Every composer has this, though. I'm telling you right now, you go and you look at Danny Elfman, great guy, made the Batman theme from the Tim Burton films, fantastic. What is he doing now? What's his most recent work? 50 Shades trilogy.
Was it?
Yes. Hans Zimmer, always used by Nolan, for all of his films, Dunkirk, Dark Knight, even Batman vs. Superman has a fantastic soundtrack. I love it. And Man of Steel as well.
He did
Boss Baby. Yeah, the Boss Baby, yeah.
I remember that. And I actually remembered listening to it, and it's not a bad soundtrack, I'll say. Because
it's not, but I mean, just like, composers get these scores every so often where it's just like, maybe it's just the paycheck. Who knows?
Maybe.
Exactly, yeah.
Who knows? Oh, man. Well, Chris actually, when he saw that before we started recording, left the room.
Oh, no, yeah, because I saw his name, and I'm like, I didn't connect the dots immediately. I'm like, hey, that sounds familiar. And you were like, he did the Black Panther soundtrack. I'm like, now he sounds really familiar. And I'm like, is that Gambino's producer? And he just immediately ran out of the room at that revelation. And Matt is going to recreate it for me right now, or he's just taking a sip of water.
He's just taking a sip of water.
But
I mean, I think we're going to start wrapping it up here.
Yeah, I think we've hit the mark.
I mean, it's just disappointing to see. It's disappointing.
Because
when I heard about this, I was like, there is potential here. And I'm really hoping Sony learned from seeing how to make, reintroduce a character or whatnot. Because, I mean, technically, they had to reintroduce a character here.
Yeah.
With Spider-Man Homecoming. I was hoping that somebody would be like, hey, maybe we should call up Kevin Feige, the guy that's been kind of handling the whole ship of the MCU and leading it down whatever the whole 10 years that he's been planning. And it's like, no, apparently they just didn't want to contact Marvel at all with this. And you know what? The most jarring thing about this too is Stan Lee has a cameo in this. And it caught me off guard at first.
And then you're like, oh wait, this is a Marvel movie.
I'm like, I forgot this is a Marvel property. It's just that is not something I should be saying about a Marvel property.
Yes. Yeah, no, it's an unfocused movie, and I genuinely think when you look at it on paper, I think it's trying to be a superhero comedy, but that's just not how it pans out.
Yeah, I mean, this tonal clash is all over the place. Matthew, you've been quiet for most of the review. Is there any last things you want to hit before we get our wrap up and final thoughts?
I said after I got out of the film, I said that I post on Facebook that Venom is atrocious, and it's mainly just because I didn't think it was that good of a film. I still don't. It may have been also contributed to the fact that same night I walked in. That same night I left a bit too late, so I wasn't able to meet you guys at the period we were going to meet, so we could all drive there together.
There's a lot of effort for not much.
A lot of traffic issues and stress related to that. Got there behind a person who took forever to make a right turn, and then
I have footage of that.
Yeah,
too.
and then got into the lobby, and as we were buying the tickets, I looked up and saw that My Hero Academia 2 Heroes, the multi-million-dollar grossing film, which is very impressive for a limited release film, playing at 7 p.m. just an hour passed when I had arrived, and I was just thinking, what could have been. But no, thinking back to it, I still think it's a bad film. But I'm interested to see how people look back on it years to come, because I think that there is a bizarre nature to the film.
Yeah.
The same bizarre nature that Chris here sort of found some enjoyment out of.
I'm not going to rewatch this movie. It's not
and it is bizarre in an understandably likable way for some people. And so that's really what I'm going to say. If you are if you want to kind of rekindle that enjoyment, because I went into it not expecting that type of old-fashioned cheese. I was expecting ideally I went into it expecting I don't think this is going to be a good movie, and then it kind of proved my point. Yeah. I went into it though not ever expecting that level of cheese, and if I had, maybe I would have enjoyed it, because I grew up loving those Sam Raimi Spider-Man films. So Spider-Man 1 and Spider-Man 2, I love them both. Spider-Man 3 kind of was like an overdose, so I was like, ugh. But man, sometimes those you look back at some of those old '90s superhero films like Blade, and you're just like, oof, that's some good stuff.
It sucks too, because everybody's getting on a Spider-Man high right now. We just had Homecoming came out last year. This year he was in Infinity War. He had his game come out a few weeks before this movie came out,
which could be which could be my favorite version of Spider-Man ever.
That's what I've been hearing a lot of too. And it's just to get another Spider-Man property, only for it to be disappointing compared to everything that we've been getting up to this point, it just hurts. Luckily, we're gonna end the year hopefully with a bang of a property with Into the Spider-Verse.
Oh yeah,
we're gonna. There were two after credit things.
I'm gonna touch on one of them. Don't you worry.
Yeah. One of which was related to Venom and stuff like that, which was very, very funny. And since we're not doing spoilers, I won't say what I thought that scene was gonna be going into it. I was really excited, and I thought I can see the wheels turn, and then I was like, ooh. That's not at all what I thought it was going to be.
I'm glad Carrot Top is finding work.
I am glad that Carrot Top is finding work. And then the second one was literally just a trailer for Into the Spider-Verse.
Yeah, it's a 5-minute clip from Into the Spider-Verse. It's probably the best part of this movie.
And it's not from this movie.
Which is sad.
And the thing is, it's just beautiful. It's beautiful incredible. Animation. It's energetic. It's funny. It's everything this film wasn't. And it's in 5 minutes. And you're just like, why couldn't we just watch this?
I will say, as soon as the credits hit, I could hear the instrumental track to Venom by Eminem start up, and I'm like, thank God I can actually hear this in the theater.
And that's another thing I want to bring up. So another thing in the defense of Venom is that there were a lot of people who were the article that I read on IGN. It was talking about how the guy who wrote the article, again, it's really weird they don't say by this person, but it may just be the mobile app. And he was saying, I grew up on Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and all this other stuff that where you had rappers making these themes for these movies and these shows. So it's what? I kind of enjoyed that. That's quoting him. I thought it was funny in the wrong ways.
Yeah.
Yes.
But I totally understand when people get excited about that type of stuff and consider it to be a positive.
I will say this is a pretty great bad movie. I had a lot of fun. Not going to rewatch it again, but if you want a good laugh, definitely you can pop this in.
You guys ready? Final thoughts?
Yeah. I will just quote the article. Also, Venom features an Eminem rap song about the character specially commissioned for this film. This may just be the raving of a nostalgic member of Generation Y, but that is something I definitely miss. As someone raised on the Adams Groove, Turtle Power, and Are You Ready for Freddy, the rap narrative over the closing credits is the most natural thing in the world, and I love when it happens.
I definitely share that opinion, but only because it's jarring to me.
Anyways,
so
to give our final thoughts,
yes.
I'll start.
Okay.
I mean, like I said, I wasn't surprised on how bad this was. I'm just more disappointed. I wanted this to be good. I hate sitting through a bad movie. It's the worst. And especially with that first 40 minutes, I was like, oh my God, this is going to be one of the worst films this year. Luckily, when it picked up and, Venom showed up, actually, finally, I was like, okay, it's bouncing between average stuff to bad, but it's not as bad as those first 40 minutes.
Yeah.
I was just sitting there the entire time just going, man, the comedy, it's fine in some parts. Other times, it feels like a college humor sketch that involves Eddie Brock's character trying to combat with having this parasite live inside of him
and eating pizza rolls.
And then other times, the action is amazing. And then, like I said earlier, I was gonna get on this. The last action scene in this movie is like watching two giant globs just constantly hitting each other. And the thing is,
what it is.
It's what it is. And also the camera, it's like, this is a CGI fight, you guys. You guys can just put the camera back. Like, you don't have to get up close. Like, you're not really showing like any cool choreography. Anytime it slows down, you can tell what's going on in the fight. But when like the two blobs of Riot and Venom are hitting each other, it is confusing to tell who is who, because also it's at night and it just looks messy. It reminded me of like the first Transformers movie when the Autobots and Decepticons ever started fighting. It's just like,
That's
okay,
definitely...
I can't really tell what's going on here. I really can't. And then just Tom Hardy, I thought he was fine in this movie. I thought he was good, and I thought he did a fine job voicing Venom and doing Eddie Brock, even though his voice was really weird. But then everybody else in this movie is in a completely different movie, so it's just, there's a tonal clash issue here the entire time. It's just frustrating to watch sometimes, because like Chris said, you see potential and then it's just not used. But I mean, other than that, it's what I expected it to be. So is it a bad movie? Yes. For me, it's a D+. Until we got to that stinger, and then there is a line said by a certain somebody referring to another character in Spider-Man. And when you hear it, you'll know who it is. And it took that plus and it yanked it away, and it's just a normal D now.
It's like you are really banking on this being a franchise.
Yeah, I mean, it was like, ooh, you could have just not shown that to me and not had that terrible line at the end.
Do you want to go first on your...
I think I will. I don't remember what I gave next gen, because I'm trying to think.
D+, C-, I think.
D+, C-.
Yeah,
you were more merciful than we were.
Okay. Yeah, because I'm trying to think which of these films I'd rather rewatch. That's the mental math I'm doing in my head. But instead I'll just go with my own. I'll go with my gut on this, and I'll say at first I was gonna say, D, because I figure, it's not a great film. But then I thought about. But then I thought back to Femme Venom and her thick thighs, and I thought, you know what? I'm going to give this film a D+.
Are you kidding? those like 3 seconds were the saving grace for the movie.
Yeah, actually, because I thought that was a really cool character design. And if I'm being serious, it's because I am interested in the possibility of this film becoming a cult classic in the future. I think that the fact that it was able to reinvigorate that kind of type of argument, I think gives this film some worth beyond just its narrative qualities.
Right. I'll give you that.
And thick Femme Venom.
My God. All right, so I think I've said it, all I've needed to say. This definitely should have been a comedy, a rom-com that turns into a supervillain movie. That sounds, that clash of genres sounds like something Edgar Wright would make. I'm so glad he's doing his own thing right now, though, and not touching this at all. He wouldn't be interested in it, but that's just a little aside. Definitely an unfocused piece of garbage, like a turd in the wind. Yes, there it is.
I was wondering if anyone was going to use it.
I just I thought of it a second before it came out of my mouth, so I'm glad I said it. But yeah, no, definitely something I had fun with. Definitely something I'm not going to watch again. It is not worth my time. Probably not worth your time unless you're watching it for the first time. I don't really care. But if you want a good movie where it's about a guy and he's like possessed and is a killer or whatever, then go watch Upgrade or Evil Dead 2, or there was another movie I had in mind, or Into the Spider-Verse. Just don't watch this one.
Just wait.
This is a D- from me. Yeah, it's Venom.
Thank you, Matthew, for
Venom,
showing me that.
Venom.
Matthew just showed me a very precarious picture.
I was trying to find a picture of Femme Venom.
I really don't like. Oh my God, that is Rule 34.
I was about to say you're gonna stumble across something like that.
Oh my God.
But Chris, what was?
Well, it's covering her bits.
I don't want to look at. God. What'd you say, Joe?
What was your grade?
D-.
D-. Well, there you have it. I think it's D's all around, right?
Yeah, we have the full spectrum.
Yeah, the full spectrum. D+, D, and then D-.
Yep. Yeah.
But yeah, sadly to say, people, it wasn't what you probably were looking for. Maybe it was. Maybe you were just hoping this would fail so Marvel can just make it better. I don't know. But there you have it. Venom, not one of our favorites of this year.